Ravi Kumar, CEO of Cognizant, and Umesh Sachdev, CEO of Uniphore. Thanks for having me here at Cognizant's New York office for Fortt Knox.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, there's a partnership here that I want to talk about. Let me just start there. Ravi, you are one of the biggest in the world when it comes to actually deploying useful technology into industry, trying to make it useful, trying to make companies, customers productive. Why the partnership with Uniphore?
So this is uniquely important in the drift of value to enterprises. I mean, last year there was $500 to $600 billion of AI infrastructure, which was set up. This year, $1 trillion is expected to go into AI infrastructure. It has a short shelf life. The technology is very contextual. We think the value drift and the velocity at which this is getting built and the velocity at which this is getting drifted, there is a gap. And that's why you're not seeing value with enterprises yet. The drift is going to happen over a period of time. It's complex because technology of the past was written around the microprocessor. It was very deterministic. Technology, software which is going to be written now, software 2.0 as I call it, is very contextual. You have to ground the technology in the conditions. The work of the past was basically enhancement of worker productivity. This is going to complete the work, action, and potentially do things which humans couldn't do.
Okay.
And the surface area is much more, but it is very contextual. And if it is contextual, you have to ground it. And if you have to ground it, you need to know the tribal knowledge. You need to know the conditions. You need to actually understand the behavior.
Right.
I mean, I keep saying we have to teach AI how to be a part of your team. So this partnership with Uniphore is all about grounding the technology to complete the work and to do things which classical software didn't do.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to do with this partnership. So it's about context engineering, as I call it. And context engineering is all about how do I get AI to be understanding the hustle of the company.
And so, Umesh, where do small language models fit in?
So that's a good place to start. Look, when Ravi and I started talking about this several months ago, we said with everything that's happening in enterprise AI, there's a gap and a need to create targeted, governable AI, which is deeply rooted in the enterprise context. And only then can outcomes be realized by these companies.
Because large language models are inadequate, they're too general?
So let's talk about the difference between a large language model and a small language model. For starters, a small language model starts being a large language model one day. And then what we're really saying is, for most, if not all enterprise use cases for AI, using a bazooka which was trained on generic internet data isn't the right answer. Why is it not the right answer? Because the knowledge that a large language model has is very vast, not contextualized to the enterprise, and therefore, to make it work, there's this thing called the context window. An enterprise needs to put bigger and bigger context windows to make an LLM understand what a life sciences company is doing or a financial services company is doing. By reducing the size of the model and calling it a small language model, and then focusing that small model on a use case. As an example, in life sciences that we're working together, medication risk identification. It's such a specific use case, which manually takes hundreds of people in pharmaceutical companies. But now these AI agents with a dedicated small language model trained on medication risk identification is delivering that outcome. In financial services, you're a credit card customer, fraud dispute management. Another use case our teams are working together. So we are going really minute, picking out use cases which are impactful and have immediate ROI, and saying we're going to train together these industrial models based on Cognizant's knowledge of the industry, Uniphore's technology prowess, and deliver these solutions, AI agents plus these industrial SLMs, which have a very short ROI cycle.
Now let's talk impact.
This kind of addresses the heterogeneity of enterprises.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this is a technology which is probabilistic. The technology which we wrote around the microprocessor for the last 25 years is very deterministic. It was rule-based.
Yeah.
It was logic-based. So if it is probabilistic, going back to what Umesh said, it has to be grounded into the conditions, and it has to understand the behavior, and it has to address the heterogeneity so that the productivity you need is actually going to really come in a very valuable way.
And that's where the value gets added. There's a lot of concern over what happens to headcount as a result of this. And Ravi, I think you said you're actually planning to expand headcount at the entry level as a result of what AI is enabling now, which is really kind of counterintuitive to a lot of what the market is expecting. Tell me what you think you can do with smart new folks deploying AI and perhaps getting onboarded and delivering value more quickly than they could in the past.
That's a great question. I have a thesis that this is a technology which is going to be an equalizer. It has more productivity at the bottom of the pyramid. You could create more throughput, and actually you could hand over expertise on the fingertips with people at the bottom of the pyramid to create significantly more throughput without entry barriers to new jobs. So, while I have this thesis, I've also applied it in my company. In 2024, we hired 15,000 school graduates. In 2025, we hired 20,000 school graduates. In 2026, we're going to hire 25,000 school graduates.
That's like a whole company in most places worth of people.
And we think that's where the value is. Because these are people who only know the way we teach them how to do things. We have stats inside the company. The bottom 50 percentile had a 37% improvement in productivity. The top 50 percentile had a 17% increase in productivity. So we're doing it in an economically viable, scalable way. We're going to create that breadth of, we're going to broaden the pyramid and shorten the pyramid. So the path to expertise is quicker, and the entry barriers to jobs get non-existent. You could increase more throughput with the tooling. We could make it asynchronous. What I mean by asynchronous is a lot of my employees at the bottom of the pyramid are agent managers. They have some work they do. There's some work they macro delegate, and they actually micro steer, as I call it.
So why do you need the middle of the pyramid? I mean, I can see the value at the top of the strategy. At the bottom, they get smarter faster.
Still need the middle of the pyramid, because the way it works, it took you much longer to get to the middle of the pyramid. It's going to take you much shorter time to get to the middle of the pyramid. It's a less hierarchical structure. It's a more networked structure. That's the future we're going to go to. And it's going to be very non-linear in productivity, because as you go up the chain, you're going to delegate more to the agentic capital around you, and you're going to steer as you go forward. So that's what we are experimenting, and that's what we are applying to our landscape, and we feel like it's working.
I was speaking, Umesh, with the CEO of Hinge Health right after their earnings this week. And he was saying that the way that they're using AI, they were able to keep their kind of care team headcount stable, at least their costs stable, while increasing their revenue 50%, because it was that much quicker for their providers to understand how somebody was advancing or declining in their joint care and how to apply the next step for them. What kinds of, we're talking about bottom of the pyramid, mid-pyramid, high, what kinds of productivity advances are you seeing with your customers right now? How is that affecting the amount of value that people with different levels of experience in an industry can deliver?
So everything you mentioned about the healthcare example has been my experience. As you know, Uniphore serves about 2,500 large enterprise globally with now agentic AI, small language models. And since the first week of January this year, I've been on the road. I was in Davos, Europe, US. I've probably met 100 CEOs in the last 60 days. And what Ravi just said is a club of one. What I'm hearing from my clients mostly is the reverse of what Ravi articulated, his strategy of entry-level jobs. Most of our clients are talking about entry-level jobs being slashed in their budgets, at least for 2026.
This is a flawed model, I think.
It is a flawed model, but that's the sentiment in the industry, because people are under pressure, CEOs are under pressure to deliver ROI with AI. Everyone wants in the next earning cycles to demonstrate benefits. Now the real benefits are beginning to come, but not necessarily attacking the entry-level jobs. I'll give you a couple of examples. We work with a large insurance company in the US. And if you think about when an insurance company processes a claim application, so we have something with our vehicle or home and we file for a claim application, This company had 4 people that have to go through every claim application to sign off and say approve or disapprove. And this used to take 27 minutes. They've been optimized over years and it's down to 27 minutes. With a small language model trained on how claims should be processed and AI agents running through these policies, they still have a human being at the end of it, but 3 AI agents and 1 human being. Now that claim process down to 3 minutes, okay? And what I've observed is not like they reduced their head count. To your point, they maintain the head count, but the throughput, the growth is much higher, all right? Yep. And so that's why it's so cool to partner with Cognizant at this moment of time, where CEOs are under pressure trying to show outcomes. What we are saying is by going deep in industrial context that Cognizant represents, bringing state-of-the-art technology that Uniphore represents, we are in a position to deliver massive growth and efficiency to our clients, and hopefully making them realize in the process that actually entry-level jobs, which is Cognizant strategy, is the way to go. Accelerating entry-level jobs is the way to go.
I think there's also, just to add to what Umesh is saying, so well articulated, the drift of value in digital technologies when we applied technology kind of went up the chain. And knowledge workers got the most. And in effect, what happened was there wasn't wage increases at the bottom because there wasn't as much productivity. If you look at the last 20 or 30 years, productivity has been flattish. Here we are with a technology where the drift can actually be downwards, and you could hand over expertise to the workers at the bottom and hence shift the drift back. I mean, we created a little bit of a digital divide between people who had the digital skills, and we created a system where all of that value, be it insights, intelligence, everything kind of accrued upwards. And there was a differential between wages at the top, which increased to the wages at the bottom. Here we are with a technology where the entry barriers are low. You could kind of hand over expertise, hand over agency to a worker, if you pivot it in the right direction and drift that back.
What are the implications for global economies, particularly for India, where there's been such a strong entry-level technology workforce and questions about the mobility of that workforce? We have cleared one interesting mobility hurdle during and post-COVID as remote work became more globally accepted because it was necessary. Now we have this technology that perhaps is allowing more mobility, more value to accrue to more layers of this pyramid. What is the imperative for different economies, different countries to invest to allow their workforces to actually shine?
I think, you know, one of the reasons what Umesh was talking about is right. The elimination of jobs, or jobless growth, as I call it, is also happening because there is economic uncertainty. There's so much economic, I would say, instability that you pivot quickly to doing things which can eliminate stuff. If you really look at it, if there was economic growth and there was stability, you're going to look for doing more for less. You're going to look for what can I do with this technology to pivot to growth. How do I take the barriers of growth, which is primarily bottlenecks related to throughput, bottlenecks related to capacity, how could you take that out? I think the thing to do is back to K-12 schools, back to undergrad education. You have to teach people how to use this technology to amplify their potential. I mean, you should teach them native skills so that they can be very useful for jobs at the front and jobs at the back if AI is in the middle. I mean, that's what the future is going to be. You're going to see a ton of jobs at the front, ton of jobs at the back, with AI being at the middle. So you teach them native skills on how to do things without AI, and you give them assessments to do things, how to amplify themselves with AI. And if you can shift that lifelong learning template back to K-12 schools, in fact, I actually believe the template of work, education, work, and retire is out of whack. because just the dynamic speed at which all of this is moving, you have to intertwine education and work. So just going back to the pivot on India, India is going to be the operations tower. There is technology, there is operations coming together. The examples which Umesh spoke about, which we are partnering on to deliver small language models, is to allow those operational towers to embed technology in them and create the throughput and make them AI-led operations towers for the future. I mean, that's what India is, India's stories. It's not just about tech services, it's about operations of companies. That's where the surface area is.
Yeah.
The surface area is not tech spend anymore. And if both of them are coexisting, you could intertwine operations and technology. And I go back to this agent manager concept. I go back to macro delegating and micro steering, and therefore create the throughput at the bottom so that you get higher productivity. I mean, India's problem is not just jobs. India's problem is jobs at a higher productivity.
Yes.
And that's when they could get to like the 20 billion mark which they're aspiring to.
Umesh, the market's problem right now is understanding software and who's going to be able to retain and maybe even grow value, and who's going to experience some pretty significant value destruction. You're in this position to have a front row seat, arguably maybe you're on the field, in how this technology is getting deployed, what's getting displaced, what's getting enhanced. Does this questioning of the value of existing software, especially application software powers, does it make sense? And to what extent do you see it as overdone? How far do you see it going?
So here's what we are seeing in the market. The role of application software cannot be more underscored as more and more of these agents and small language models or large language models try to deliver impact. People ignore that the core relationships and logic and data that have become tribal knowledge for these enterprises, that still needs to be in some place. And the large application software, especially the one which are deeply rooted with context of the industry, are very durable in my opinion. Now, are there going to be some application software which were less about the context and more workflow automation which are likely to get disrupted? Sure. But are there some which are so deeply ingrained in the context of the enterprise that they're very durable for this economy? That's also a fact. So from my lens, obviously what we've seen in the last 2 weeks in terms of the stock market's reaction, with Anthropic releasing a new version of Claude for legal, and the reaction that all application software is going to suffer, that's overdone. But there will be a big gap between the haves and the have-nots. But I think in all this, what's being missed here, John, is each time a client of mine tries to focus on, let's use Agentic to replace either headcount or application software, we actually tell them we are both setting ourselves for failure. But each time the client goes after a growth area, we are beginning to see massive success. And I'm reminded of this one very big win that I believe we've had in the last year or so at Uniphore. We announced our partnership with KPMG about a month ago. Very different synergy that we have with Cognizant. KPMG and us, we approached a Fortune 50 client who wanted us to optimize contract leakage. They had 35,000 contracts and 1.2 million invoices. And somebody had to match invoice part number with what the contract was saying. And obviously there was a large amount of leakage that they were experiencing. Prior to GenAI, prior to Agentic, the proposal was to send in 1,400 people. Now the cost of the project exceeded the perceived benefit of the project. So it never took off. Now we are in a realm where we're doing use cases that could not be done prior to Agentic. With KPMG, we trained a contract small language model. We now have over 700 AI agents and 4 associates running through those invoices. And in a matter of 6 months, hundreds of millions of optimized revenue have been generated. This is a great example where it's not so much let's displace an application software.
And classical software couldn't do this.
Classical software couldn't do this. The traditional let's just throw bodies at the work model couldn't do this, and is driving new growth. And because of new growth, the number of licenses for their underlying invoicing software is going up, because now they are more confident that they're optimized and they can throw more at. So it's lifting the entire value chain. And these are examples that we'll hear more and more throughout 26.
I think the per seat model for software companies is going to be up for grabs. The per hour model for consulting firms will be kind of up for grabs. The question is, this is a software where you could do an outcome-based model. It's going to be bespoke. One of the reasons why it's being overdone is also because nobody knows whether the value capture is going to happen above the SaaS layer or going to happen on the side or in a different place, and how durable those earnings are. But what is certain is you need a system of record. You need an interplay between deterministic and probabilistic software, and both coexist. Where the value capture is going to be happen is going to be, it's a question you can answer. I mean, you could see winners in the SaaS world, and you could see new players emerge. I also think it's going to be bespoke, because you are actually trying to address the heterogeneity of enterprises. If you're trying to address the heterogeneity of enterprises with a contextual software, you naturally aligned to bespoke work. So, there are various aspects to it. The point is the surface area is much higher. New software is being written. I mean, I went to a healthcare client where we have Trizeto, where all the work we do there, end-to-end claims, and there is a ton of work outside the software which is related to straight regulatory work for Medicaid and Medicare. We figured out it can't be on classical software. It is agentic in nature. And here we are, addressing a new addressable spend for our clients and for us, and creating digital labor and increasing throughput and velocity for a thing which we couldn't do with classical software. So, I mean, I just see this as a unique opportunity of coexistence between software of the past, software of the future. Software of the past is going to be written in new ways because you can use AI to write it. Software of the future, which is contextual, around the LLM, around the neural networks, is going to be net new work to be done, which enterprises need. The throughput and the productivity has been flattish for the last 25, 30 years. So there is going to be a bump in productivity, we like it or not. Well, and if the bump in productivity happens, there's going to be increase in wages.
Yeah.
And if there's increase in wages, you're going to see, growth coming in a much more healthy way without inflation. That is the flywheel we all want to be in, and it is actually in the hustle of operations of companies.
Looking forward to seeing it, and it's a fast-moving space, gentlemen. Thank you.